Hi there, my fencing teists. So the next parry, parry 5 or quinte, is generally unheard of. Most fencing teachers don't know it. Aside from that, it's quarte, but with the hand in pronation. That's all they know it as, and they don't know how to use it. They don't know what it's about. And in many cases, the historical context of it, it's just for completionist purposes. You have all the other parries, hand in pronation, hand in supination. This covers the inside high line, and the inside low line can be covered by septime or prime. You don't really need that extra inside parry position aside from completionary purposes, just so that all the permutations are covered. I personally have used it. I've used it a few times as a dedicated parry. I parry 6 and I rolled over into quinte, and it covered my low torso. And while I didn't get the riposte off it, which would in theory just be an extension like in tierce, I pulled off the parry. I managed to block with it. It is awkward, I'm not going to lie. It's probably not something you'll ever use. However, it is, I'd say, important to know that if you take the hand in tierce and you just bring it over to cover the inside line, that is quinte. And the parry position of quinte, while I'd say unorthodox and uncomfortable, the guard position of quinte I generally find to be fairly useful in that it does cut off the body in a very particular way, in that if I'm in tierce, that covers the outside, but my inside guard is open. If I take quarte, I cover the inside, but my outside guard is open. If I take quinte, it almost bisects both sides, so it can go either way easily, and I can just shift out into tierce or shift into quarte very easily. That's what I use it for. This is one of my favorite positions to begin a bout in, simply because it's deceptive. The unarmed hand position is essentially going to be your downward pressing blocks. So you lop-sao, you push down, or you shunt the blade in, or your hand in. Many forms of snake block with the inside of the wrist, turning the hand down. I'd say that's another appropriate application of you block and then wrist strike in. That's something you find in Wing Chun, you find it in snake. I've heard that it's also in some forms of karate, but it's just that inward wrist strike, and then you just extend out as a riposte. The quinte position, again, it's uncomfortable for most of you. I'd say just give it a try, and if anything, it'll teach you something about your body dynamics, how your body moves, what's uncomfortable, and giving you a greater sense of the motion of your arm and what you can pull off. There is not historically a high quinte where you take this and go up like this, simply because that puts a lot of strain on the wrist. My elbow is still hurt right now, and I'm feeling this most in my wrist. It's just an uncomfortable position. So the low quinte is pretty much all you're going to find in terms of the quinte position. I have, however, heard of that the quinte position with the blade out like this was used in some Italian fencing positions. So they take their Italian guard and they would keep the blade in quinte. I didn't learn it that way. I learned it essentially in quarte. So that's how I learned it. But give that a try. See how it feels. Until then, keep your teacups empty.